And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. According to the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia's website, the leader of an opposition party may choose MLAs from the party to serve as critics, observing one specific ministry or agency very closely and asking questions about the organization's activities and plans. On today's Open Connection, critic on public safety and Solicitor General, MLA Mike Morris.
I'm the MLA for Prince George Mackenzie, and I got elected in 2013 back in the day. And I was the Solicitor General during the Christy Clark government, Minister for Public Safety and Solicitor General. And now I'm the public safety critic for the BC Liberals as we're sitting in opposition here. So prior to becoming a politician, I had served with the RCMP from 1973 until 2005 when I retired from them. And when I retired, I was the district officer in charge of the northern 75% of the province, so including terrorists. I could have met that area there. Very familiar with it. In fact, I used to be in charge of New Orleans detachment back in the 80s. So I'm pretty familiar with the territory up there and the people. So. And policing, as a senior officer, particularly in policing, as a junior officer, you're arresting and releasing people all the time. So policemen are very much aware of the charter rights, charter of rights and freedoms. They're very much aware of the requirements to release as soon as possible and all the conditions associated to that. And then as a senior manager in the RCMP, I also have to keep up on all the case law and all the jurisprudence that affected those things, so that we knew, when we were doing our supervisory work, that everybody was doing what they were supposed to do. So, I retired in 2005, but in my role as Solicitor General, I got back in touch with a lot of the case law. The charter changed a lot of things when the Charter of Rights and Freedoms came in 1982. Changed a number of different things in how we operated as a police force and how the courts operated. But those laws are continually refined on a regular basis. People are always submitting charter arguments against, a number of things. And in this case, what affected the revolving door of justice, as we call it, is there has been a number of cases that have gone before the Supreme Court, but one in particular called Regina versus Antic, I believe, in 2017. And that's where the court says, oh, just a minute, this isn't, the bail provisions and release provisions aren't being applied equally across Canada. And we've lost sight of the fact that everybody that's charged is considered innocent until proven guilty. That's number one. And the other part of it is, and it was a charter argument against the right to being released on bail, I think in section 11E of the charter, as soon as possible, has not been upheld as well. So the courts addressed that. And they basically came back and says, no, if somebody is arrested, you don't assume they're guilty. You don't, if they're arrested, you are required to release them as soon as practicable, unless there's evidence to show that their release will bring the administration of justice into disrepute or it will affect public safety. But the courts have also said public safety is a broad term to define. Nobody can really put a definition on exactly what that means. So the emphasis has been more or less on bringing the administration of justice into disrepute. And so that's what I'm hanging my hat on. And there's a number of sections in the criminal code that, if somebody is arrested, they're brought before a justice. And it's up to a prosecutor to present the evidence to the justice to say this person needs to be held in custody because of A, B, and C. And it could be a history of failing to appear. It could be a history of a number of things. It has to be quite serious before the judge will look at it and say, okay, yeah, I agree with you. We'll hold in custody him or her, whatever the case might be. What I think is happening, this is my own personal opinion on this. When I first read Bill C-75, which is a bill that changed the criminal code back in 2019 that added a bunch of these provisions, provisions to it. When I first read it back in 2019, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to add 10, 20, 30% more workload to the police, but also the prosecution, the prosecutors, because there's a number of steps that they need to take in order to fulfill the charter requirements. And we are a country that operates on the rule of law. So, and that's expensive. And it's up to the Attorney General, it's up to the Solicitor General, if it affects police operations, but it's up to the Attorney General of the province to adapt their strategies and methods to accommodate the change that the Supreme Court or any court level brings to bear upon society. And to merely say that, well, the Crown Counsel has to release them because of the provisions of Bill C-75. I don't buy that.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Attorney General and Ministry responsible for housing is responsible for a number of services such as legal services, prosecution services, civil and family justice services, and providing legal advice to the government, to name a few. Let us return to the conversation as MLA Moore shares how the Justice Act empowers the Attorney General.
In the Justice Act, it instructs the Attorney General to make sure that he's providing the services necessary to keep the administration of justice from harm and to protect public safety. So if that means that he needs to add 100% more prosecutors or a number of prosecutors to address the additional workload that they have there, or if that means that he has to provide a direction to Crown Counsel saying in these circumstances you need to consider these things, and that will be in line with the charter. He can't do anything that's not in line with the charter rights. But it's his job to do that. And I think that, this came and went. And the Crown Counsel, I don't blame them a bit. Those guys and ladies work hard in trying to satisfy all the requirements that we have there. But I think they're just overwhelmed. And it's much like a hospital emergency center getting overrun, and then you start triaging your files and you start releasing people that shouldn't be released because you just don't have time to look at those files. And the courts say, well, we've got to let them go anyway. So you do that. And at the end of the day, we have this revolving door. What happens as a result of that, and again, this is just my opinion based on my experience, and I've got 32 years of experience. I got two boys that are at nursing and to talk with them a lot. But I think what happens is criminals get used to the fact that there's nothing punitive anymore, that they can commit a crime and they're, if as long as they say, yes, Your Honor, I'll appear in court on whatever date it is, then away you go. And they go out and they start recommitting, and you get arrested and you're released, and you get arrested and you're released. And finally, these guys that are committing these crimes say, they can't do anything to me, so I can just do whatever I want to do, which includes the more serious crimes of assault and in some cases homicide. So, it puts added pressure on the police. I've seen, and I've got the stats someplace, I looked at it with terrorists. And here's, for an example, administration of justice offenses. So that's failing to appear, breach of your condition, breach of probation, those kinds of things. In terrorists, those offenses went up 73% in the 73%. That's a pretty significant increase. And that means it's added to the workload of the police because they're the ones that are arresting and breach of probation, fail to appear, and all those things, and have to process them and do all that in prosecution as well. So that's significant. It's not as bad as Kelowna. I looked at Kelowna. Kelowna's gone up 153% in the last 10 years. The province overall has gone up 36%. So there's a lot of communities that this isn't affecting as much as others. So, I see it affecting terrorists, it's affecting Prince George, it's affecting Kelowna. But so I think those are the areas that I think the attorney needs to look at and say, do we have enough resources in this community to handle the extra workload as a result of those things that we find? And I don't think they do. But that's something that we'll put to. We've got estimates coming up with the Attorney General's ministry after our break. We'll come back after Easter. And I know some of these questions will be put to him at that particular time.
The crime has increased and there seems to be no repercussions. Was this a trend that you saw before COVID?
COVID happened just after this change to the criminal code. So that came about in 2019. So it's pretty difficult looking at the statistical data to try and extrapolate exactly what the fundamental reason is for this. But I would say it had more of an effect on Bill C-75 had more of an effect on that than COVID. But yeah, with your mayor and councillor when they came down here, we had some very in-depth discussion on the same thing that we're talking about here now. And I know that they went and met with the Attorney General and I believe the Public Safety Minister as well. So they made quite an impact down here. Good on Terrace for doing that.
This is happening in our small towns. I thought this was just like a big city problem, but it seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, I think based on my experience as a police officer, I know what happens everywhere. I spent time in Hazelton, I spent time in Mayanch, I spent time in Fraser Lake and Fort St. James, and all of those communities, they've got the same issues. The same issues that are happening there are happening in bigger centers as well. So, and it's overwhelming in some of these smaller communities because they just don't have the resources to handle it at any level. We can always use more police in our communities, more prosecutors to try and get the job done. I think we're going to have to do that to kind of catch up and level the playing field and make sure people know that if they commit a crime, they're going to be caught and they're going to be prosecuted without this revolving door.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. It's been an ongoing concern that the pandemic has affected the mental health of Canadians, particularly those who have experienced impacts of the pandemic, such as social isolation, job loss, or changes in relationships. Let us return to the conversation with MLA Mike Morris.
I had a good discussion with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, Beverly McLaughlin, and while she was still the Chief Justice, she retired. She was out talking to a group when I was Solicitor General, and she said, the provinces are going to have to come to terms with the realities of today. We can't use the criminal justice system to prosecute those who are suffering from mental illness or addictions, and you better do something before the courts do something about it. And I think the courts have acted on that case that I referenced in the past. So simultaneously, I think the province has to aggressively put in treatment centers for those suffering from mental illness and addiction, and it takes those folks off the street. And a lot of the crimes that they commit, in my, the way I look at it, I call them crimes of survival. They're just trying to live on the street. And if that means that they have to prostitute themselves out, or they have to steal in order to support their addiction or put over the head or whatever it is, they're going to do that just out of the will to survive. Let's get those out of the picture and let's provide them the treatment and a safe facility to be treated in. But then let's concentrate on these hardcore criminals, and let's have peace officers or police officers working on those criminal files that aren't pulled away to look after picking somebody up who's intoxicated and passed out on the street and doing something else, because it breaks your concentration. Criminal files have become so complex to investigate that if you make a mistake at the beginning of your file without really paying attention to it, and it gets into Crown Counsel, and Crown Counsel will look at it and say, I made a mistake in this, and as a result of this question that you asked, we won't be able to get a conviction on that. But if Crown Counsel misses it and you go to trial, and it shows up at trial, then you blow on a few $100,000 on a criminal investigation, and the guy walks. So we need our criminal caseload in many communities. The criminal caseload per officer is over 100, and I think Terrace is getting up there. The average in the province is probably somewhere down around 40. And based on my years of experience as a criminal investigator, I think 40 to 50 is about all a police officer can handle in a year, do it properly, and to make sure that his level of concentration is there enough so that no mistake is made, because they have become very complex and very technical to meet the requirements that the courts have placed upon rules of evidence. You got DNA, you got a number of factors to consider there.
Do you think it might be a good idea to kind of split the workload where you can have those that can do a little kind of like do the grunt work, lack of a better word, where they can get the information that's needed so the officer can continue to focus on that file?
You bet. So a number of years ago, I put together a model. It was at the 50,000 level. But my vision of policing, and I want to call it more public safety than policing. And my model of public safety is breaking it up into 3 different tiers. And you would have a contingent of criminal investigators, fully accredited criminal investigators. Some would be in uniform, some would be in clothes. That could travel anywhere in British Columbia. And maybe you've got 1,000 or 2,000 BC. And they travel anywhere where there's criminal work done. And they can concentrate on completing technically elegant criminal investigations, so you end up getting 100% charge approval and 100% convictions. It's a big ask, but I think that's a half decent marker to lay out there. The second part would be your community safety officer and or public safety officer. Those are the ones that are cross-trained with mental illness, addictions, some social services, BC housing. A number of those agencies would be teaming together and train these officers so that they de-escalate and they can, somebody is an alcoholic or a drug addict, then you can put them in the right channels to get the help that they need. If somebody needs a social worker to help them put a house over their head or something like that, then you have BC Housing helping out. And they would be dressed in a non-threatening kind of like the uniforms that we have for the BC Winter Games and Canada Winter Games in Vancouver. And some of them might have cases or something with them that the person becomes violent. But people will know that they are not the criminal people. They're there to help you get through your difficulties. And then the other level would be your community safety officer, and they're the ones that go around shaking the door knobs all night long or walking the streets. If they see you walking down the street at 2 o'clock in the morning, they come up and say, "Oh, I'm Mike Morris, the community safety. Just wonder, are you okay? What are you doing out here this time of night? Can we help you?" And I think we have to take a different approach to that. And so I think there's a review of the Police Act being undertaken right now in the province, and recommendations coming out. But I think this is the time to initiate something like that so that we have all those systems in place.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
In partnership with Northern Health and the RCMP, the CAR60 program is a mobile crisis response team that provides emergency mental health service within Prince George. In this final segment of Open Connection, MLA Morris shares what would be the next step for CAR60.
I would like to see a pilot project, and the province would have to be on board for communities like Terrace Honors, because you would need to probably have maybe enough social workers that you could run 7/24 shifts alongside the police officer, and enough mental health workers to run 7/24 shifts, just to try that out and see whether after, and do it for a period of like 18 months or 2 years, and have a look at your successes with that at the end of the day, and see whether it's dropped the level of injury to police officers and to the people that they're arresting, if it's dropped in the number of addicted and mentally ill folks that have been committing these crimes of survival. But that would be a pilot project. But just to put one person in a seat and drive around for a few hours a day, it wouldn't give you anything other than frustration.
And of course, we still haven't addressed what's something that's immediate, that's happening in the areas, especially here in Terrace, is that there are a lot of local small businesses that have to deal with something they never thought they had to deal with before, because windows are being smashed. Some workers are even businesses are cutting their hours because there's a fear of when they close shop. What do you think that we can do to help remedy that?
Yeah, well, again, I look towards the Attorney General, because that's just another symptom of a broken system. That we're not putting these folks, either the criminals, we're not prosecuting them properly, or again, the health side of things, where mental illness and addictions are left to roam the street on their own, and they're not getting the help they need. So, that's something that needs to be measured. It's expensive. These businesses that have to shut down and that get robbed so many times that they just can't afford to keep open anymore. That's something that needs to be seriously considered and measured side by side with the cost of implementing a Car 60 program in Terrace, for an example, or putting these social services, BC housing, education, everybody kind of working on the front line at the same time.
And you did bring up something that was kind of unique too, and that's dealing with those who have addictions, because they have no control over what they need to do to feed that habit. And maybe there's other programs like detoxes, something like that, we might get them into?
The detox is important. It's one of the elements that are necessary in the whole world. Back when I was a young constable back in the early 70s, we used to arrest people that were either drunk or heroin was a big thing back in those days, and heroin addicts. And we could bring them in and hold them in cells until such time as they were sober. And at that time, often, like, I knew all the heroin addicts downtown and I was policing at the time. And I could work with social services and find some place to help them out. There was a detox center in this community since been long gone. But the changes to law and the changes, from various advocacy groups prohibited the police from using that as one of the tools in their toolbox. So now, and there's no place to put them. Police are extremely frustrated because they can't do anything with any of these people. There's nowhere to put them that will provide them the help and security and support they need. So it's, to be a police officer these days, most of the problem people home after just shaking their head thinking, what good have I done here today?
Small business owners and those that kind of fear is like, what can they do? Can they do anything to help push this change?
Yeah, I think they should be writing to the Attorney General and even listing the cost. If they go over their losses over the past year and say, as a result of this last year, there's been 47 incidents and I've lost $120,000 worth of merchandise. My staff have been threatened 43 times. We've generated X number of police violence as a result of this. They need to see that in black and white and say, we need something done. And I've always worked under the concept of, if the monkey's on my shoulder, I've got to make it jump over on the decision-making shoulder. And they need all the information that I can give them in order to make a qualified, proper decision. So I think the businesses should get noisy about this. It's not the fault of the police. The police work with the tools that they're given. Maybe they don't have enough resources, and that's an issue for the Solicitor General to deal with, or the mayor, or both. But if it's a prosecution service with a revolving door that we have, then it's an Attorney General issue. And if it's addictions and mental illness issue, then that has to go to the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.